Con los miembros de la familia, ¿no? Okay. This is Marta Martinez. Okay. First, we want to just introduce some members of the family. This is Marta Antonio Martinez.
That's not going to work.
Can you hear?
Yeah.
Marta Antonio Martinez,
Perhaps.
that was her mother-in-law, Virginia, the older woman who greeted us. Her daughter was Cristina. Cristina, who is here.
Perfect.
And there may be some other, I don't know, other family members who we will meet as we kind of roll. Marta, el esposo de ustedes, Constantino is her husband y Miguel, es hijo.
Hijo de
Ya se fue.
El otro ya se fue.
Okay. Her husband Constantino is Virginia's son. She has ¿cuántos hijos están en Estados Unidos?
Seis.
6 in Estados Unidos. She has 6 children in the U.S. who've migrated. When we were here last year, one of her sons, Miguel, had come back, but he has since left. ¿Dónde están? Están en Los Ángeles. They're all in Los Angeles. They're all in LA. So as you can see, in this household, there's one man, and I think there's 5 women. There's also a grandchild, a really cute little guy. I don't know if we'll get to meet him. He's about 5 months old. So that's kind of the lay of the land. There's a kind of extended family on either side. So here is Virginia, and she's kind of the boss. She's got a lot of weight that I've observed. Hola, ¿qué tal, Constantina?
Y mi mamá también.
Ah, ¿su mamá está aquí de usted?
Sí.
¿Vive aquí también?
No,
No.
vino nada más.
¿Mande?
Vino nada más.
Ah,
Vive
vino,
aquí.
ok. Constantino. Ahí está Constantino. Él es el señor de la casa. He's the man of the house here. And Martha said that her mother came too today, just to say hello. I'm not sure where she is. But that's fairly typical here in that, you know, if you imagine 6 kids, I think a majority of the sons are in the U.S. Quite a number of them are married and they're sending money back. And women are here working clay, working the fields, doing a lot of things. So, ¿de dónde viene? Vamos a empezar con el barro. ¿De dónde viene el barro?
En el campo traemos este barro.
¿A qué distancia tienen que ir?
Como una hora.
Ok. Hacia el cerro aquí.
El cerro es el color rojo.
Okay.
Y en el campo.
So the first thing that happens is they go to gather clay. It's about an hour away. And on the way in, we were commenting, you saw how red the soil is? Where they go to collect their clay, I think it's back behind, you know, headed towards that mountain range I pointed out that's kind of behind us. But when they collect the clay, so, ¿tiene usted un pedazo de cómo es cuando lo recogen? Okay, so this is what they gather, all right? This is the clay. ¿Lo hacen con burros y canastas o camioneta?
En burros, porque no tenemos camioneta.
Okay. Martha says we collect it in baskets, big harvesting baskets, and we use burros because we don't have a camioneta. We don't have a truck. And I think that's the case for a lot of people here where owning a truck, you know, requires a certain level of income. So people want to feel it. So it's harvested in these large baskets. Here's another piece if you want to pass it around. Entonces lo cargan acá. ¿Y qué pasa después?
Lo traemos y todavía está un poquito mojado en donde lo sacamos. Y lo traemos y lo ponemos en el sol para que se seque así.
Okay. So it's a little bit moist when we take it out of the ground. And we put it in the baskets. So what we do first is we take it out of the baskets and we spread it out so it dries. So you can see what you have is not something that was just taken out of the ground, but something that's been dried. Y después,
luego lo remojamos para batirlo y sacar todas las piedritas.
Okay, so the next step is that we moisten it with water and we kind of work on it to get all of the pebbles and the little rocks out. So trying to really turn it into a fine. ¿Eso es lo que se está haciendo ahorita? ¿O ya se
Y
hizo?
después se echa esta arena.
Okay.
Cuando ya
Esto ya pasó este proceso.
Esto ya pasó este proceso.
Okay. So the process that she just described of sort of moistening it and working with it to get all the pebbles and the rocks and out of it has already been done to this piece of clay.
So what did she add to it?
Es arena.
Sí, del río lo trae.
So what she's doing now is further working the clay, and she's adding sand. This is a bucket of very fine and heavy sand that comes from the river. And this is another river sand. You know, it's almost like from a beach. Actually, the sand in local rivers, sand and gravel, this is another one of those community resources that I was talking about that goes with territory. If you're a member of a community, you have access to communal resources. So obviously the clay, in this case, nadie en la comunidad es el dueño de donde viene el barro, ¿verdad?
Sí.
So the community, the clay beds are not private. They are part of the communal land, the communal territory of this community. So if you're a member of the community, you have access, you can go harvest the clay, you can go harvest the sand. ¿Qué pasa si viene persona de otra comunidad que empieza a sacar barro?
Pues la gente va a decir por qué lo está sacando. Van a preguntar qué van a hacer con ese, o a quién lo van a llevar. Sí preguntan.
¿Les pueden multar o las autoridades? No. Okay, well she said, I asked her if somebody, you know, just came in here and started scooping up clay, what would happen? She said, well, people would stop them and they would ask them where they're going, what they're doing with the clay, what is it for? I said, would they be fined? And she said, not necessarily, but there would definitely be inquiries if they were not known as community members, because everybody here, 3,500 people, probably maybe half of them are gone. So people know, they know everybody, they know what you know, who they are, what their tractors and trucks and burros look like. So, entonces, ahora, ¿nos puedes describir lo que está pasando ahorita?
Voy a elaborar una pieza de esto.
Okay, so she's getting ready to shape, and one of the things that's really truly amazing is these are hand-built pots without a wheel. So she's starting with a sort of inverted cone, and she's going to use that. ¿Cuál se va a hacer? ¿De cuál? So she's making this sort of really interestingly shaped bowl. When Ethan and I we came here last Friday to kind of set things up, and she said they have an order for 50 that they have to deliver in Tlacolula. Es de 50, ¿no? La pedida para el otro domingo. ¿Este o el otro?
El otro.
El otro. Okay. So a week from Sunday, they have to turn in 50 of these, all fired, all finished in Tlacolula. So she's working on that order right now. So she's putting it on a piece of leather, and she's using the technique of turning it right on another rock, and that's how she's going to really make the shape. So it's not an automatic wheel, but it's the use of a circle and the friction moving it and the pressure inside the wall of the pot to build it up. And this is a technology that's been around for thousands of years. It's pre-Hispanic. She's using her finger inside to create the shape and the pressure against her other hand. If you can't see, you know, maybe exchange places or kind of look. It's almost a miracle when you watch this. It's incredible, like what happens. Now she's putting some slip on and beginning to make a lip on the top that I think she's going to eventually pull out. Esto es cuero.
Este
Oh,
es cuero y este es cáscara de jícara.
Okay, she has two tools that she's using. She has a piece of leather, and then she has a piece of a gourd, a jícara. And those are the two of the implements that she uses to help with the shaping inside, and I think eventually also outside. Anyone not get to see the sand? So again, it's all by feel, but she's simultaneously pulling it up and pulling it out.
And
to shape.
thinning it as she goes.
Right. And thinning it. Yeah. Marta, ¿con qué edad empezó usted a trabajar el barro así?
A los 15 años.
Okay, she started working with clay, making these things when she was 15 years old. Because they have this special order, they're sort of concentrating in these, but they make comales. These are the ollas, or the pots that are used for cooking water, beans, atole, you put a handle on it, all kinds of things. And again, the shapes and the technology have been around for a very long time. And really very portable too, in the sense that she's got, a couple rocks, some tools, clay. It doesn't require hardly, it doesn't require a lot of infrastructure. No electricity needed. Okay, so now she's pulling out the final shape. And I think she's going to show us a couple different things, like different shapes that she's going to do after this.
So that's considered barro rojo?
Yes, this is red. When it's fired, yeah, you can see really a little better here. This is more moist, but this is, sort of before it gets worked, but not when it's dry. You can see the.
Lynn, I actually think that that's the clay they use to create the slip, the slurry, because that has red iron oxide in it, and that's what gives it.
It's a different. Esto es diferente de este.
Es diferente. Este es del cerro.
Okay, this is what is used to make the slip, so it's slightly different than the clay underneath. Viene de otro lugar.
Sí, del cerro viene.
Okay. So the reddish clay comes from a different source that's used for the slip. So you're right, it's two different clays. But the red is what's put on the outside, and when it's fired, it has that sort of reddish burnish to it. She also has a corn cob down here that she's used. People have questions? I mean, we can kind of go conversational and... Yeah, it's mostly just like, wow.
Does she want some help?
Yes. Help with what?
We want to get in the way.
Well, when she's finished showing, in the past, we've had potters in the group, and if people want to try working with the clay or playing with it, or I think it can happen. How many How many people would like to get their hands on the clay? Okay? Great. Okay, aquí estamos.
Wow.
Usted va a mostrar otro, por ejemplo, ¿se podría sacar uno de estos?
Sí.
Okay, so now she's going to make a different shape, one of these more sort of classic cooking pots.
What would they cook in something with that opening?
Ajá. Bueno, eso por ejemplo se ocupa para cocinar.
Sí, para
Frijol
cocinar.
o
Frijol, café,
coffee,
Chocolate.
beans, ¿qué más?
chocolate, atole.
Chocolate, atole.
comida o extraño.
You know, if you don't have a large meal, you could cook it up in there.
So these pots are put directly on the fire.
Yes, se pone directamente en la fogata, ¿no?
Ajá, directo.
Yeah. Yeah, once they're fired, they're good. Yeah, like when Petra was cooking, like when she makes hot chocolate, she'll put the pot right on the edge of the comal, warm it up, and boil water in it. Usually with a hand, with a handle. Can everybody see? Is anybody videoing? So same beginning, sort of a wedge, and then putting her fist in the middle. And now she's using the corn cob. This is where the corn cob comes in, where she's rolling it. She's using it like a rolling pin, basically, to even out the walls.
That's what I was going to ask, is what purpose does that serve? It doesn't keep the texture in the pot.
An extension of your hand probably as well.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
If you were on a potter's wheel, you would be actually pulling the clay up between your forefingers. And so that serves the same purpose.
Okay, the magic begins, and it's going to be a different shape. But the same thing, using an implement on the inside and her hand for pressure on the outside. Okay, now she's adding a piece inside on the top that may be related to what she's going to pull up into the lip of the jar.